Hi everyone, so it's me again, Moonshine, and I am here and I'm going to talk more about what I talked about last week. So if you didn't watch that, maybe you want to go watch it. But if you're here having watched that and wondering what I was going to talk about next, well, welcome to the next video. Okay, so last week I talked about anger and healthy and unhealthy expressions of anger, and I ended with a question, which was I asked what would change in our actions if we remembered that we were angry because we cared, and I talked about how important it was for us to root our anger in compassion rather than correctness. But what is compassion anyway? Uh, why did I use that word rather than just like care? There were a few people also who reached out to me and gave me their thoughts on it. Like someone asked, does this mean that I have to think about the other person first? Like what would make that person do that? Where does this person come from? And there was someone else that shared their experience of being angry at someone and getting to a point where they just felt like they just needed to let go of that person and how it makes them feel selfish. So I'm going to talk about these things, okay, because both are relevant, both are questions that are actually quite important to ask. But I wanted to start from, well, what is compassion anyway? Okay, I like to ground my understanding of compassion in compassion is what I feel, is what we feel once we learn to see the big picture. What do I mean by that? Okay. The big picture is that understanding that we are all intrinsically connected. We're all in the same boat. Okay? Not that there's nothing different about us. We have different experiences. We go to different schools, we have different families, we have our different backgrounds, our different childhood experiences, and all of that. But at the same time, okay, even with all these different ideas, different perceptions, different opinions, we're all actually on the same boat. Okay? And whatever you want to understand that as, we're all on this earth, we're all human, we're all entitled to the same dignities and the same rights, etc. Okay, that's the big picture. But what we can learn to feel about each other once we understand that is compassion. That understanding that we are all intrinsically connected can help us feel for other people in that same way that we learn to feel for the people who are close to us. Okay? So compassion really is that feeling for, not looking away when someone else is having a bad time, because we know that we're all in the same boat. We're all intrinsically the same. Okay. I know that sounds very soft and very touchy-feely, but I also want the people who are watching this to understand that this is not a Hallmark card, heal the world kind of cliche. Okay? I'm going to be the first to say that compassion is real compassion. Isn't about charity, isn't about sympathy. Okay? That's why compassion is hard. Because if you really think about it, if you really think about the big picture, it gets overwhelming really quick. If you start thinking about what is happening to other people, to the world, okay, it's hard to even wrap our heads around it. It's hard to think about it without going into, kind of like an existential philosophical crisis, about what we can do and what we can, how we really play a part in all of it. Okay, So it gets overwhelming. Because realistically speaking, how can we have compassion for the people who have wronged us directly? People who did wrong to us, who hurt us. How can we have compassion to the people who we know are part of what is wrong with the world? Okay, those are hard things, and I'm not sitting here saying that, oh yeah, go, let's feel compassion for those people. It's hard. It makes no sense almost if we look at it that way, and it goes against some of our own very real experiences. So that's why I don't start there when I talk about compassion. I say, in my experience, okay, it's easier, although it's not easy at all. But I prefer to learn compassion through practice. And who else to practice compassion on but ourselves? So, what does that mean? I think we need to learn compassion by learning to give ourselves compassion. And again, by this, I don't mean like the Hallmark card, heal the world, let's, sing together, kumbaya. That's not what I mean. Okay, compassion is not about being nice to yourself. Compassion, truly giving yourself compassion, is learning to see yourself clearly. Like how we learn to feel compassion if we see the big picture of the world and our connectedness clearly. We learn to give compassion to ourselves when we learn to see ourselves clearly. And what does that mean? It means learning, being able to give ourselves compassion. We need to see what is ugly in us, what is flawed in us, the things that we don't like about ourselves, and learning to hold that at the same time as the things that are great about us, the things that we find beautiful about us, the things that we are proud of, and learning to hold both those things and not reject one and really just like grasp the other, but to learn to hold both. That is the view of ourselves from which we can truly give ourselves compassion. And why? Why is that? Well, for example, doing so allows you to not judge yourself, okay, because you see both, you see the whole, and also allows you to not give a free pass to yourself. Okay, that's why I don't like to use the word self-care so much. I like to say self-compassion a lot more because it makes more sense. Because see, when you truly give yourself compassion, what it really does is it can guide your action. For example, doing something or anything in excess is probably not a compassionate thing. Like if all you do is watch 12 hours of Netflix, okay, it's probably not good for you if you're just in bed watching Netflix. Only getting up to eat. Maybe even eating in your bed. Okay. And again, we're not saying this in judgment, okay? But really, the true understanding of this is probably not good for anyone. It's not good for the body, it's not good for the mind. Therefore, to be truly compassionate is to see that and to say, all right, you went 3 hours, maybe it's time to get up and walk around for a bit, pace yourself. And this is not easy. This is not an easy thing to tell yourself. This is not an easy thing to do. But it could be a way to be compassionate and true to yourself. At the same time, okay, depriving yourself too much and being too critical of yourself is definitely not compassionate too. And that's a little bit of an easier example to give. So basically what I mean to say is that feeling compassion for yourself is a skill that needs clarity. It needs your ability to balance and your ability to truly understand what you need. That's how you can act with compassion for yourself, because you know truly what you need and you know what to give yourself. And that's not easy. And I'm not here saying, oh yeah, if I try to like really think about how long I've been working on this, how I got to this point where I can say this, it's because it's been years of me thinking about it. It's been years of me trying my best to give myself that kind of compassion and that kind of healthy action. So, right, it's not easy for us, us as an individual. How can we try to give it to the world, to other people? That's why we really need to start with ourselves, because we are the closest thing that we have. We are always here with ourselves, and the more we practice that, the more we try to give ourselves that, to see ourselves clearly, fairly, and really to act with compassion, okay, with compassion and care towards ourselves, then that's where we begin to build the skill of looking outwards and looking out into the world and being able to do this for other people too. I mean, anything you practice again and again, eventually you'll learn. And eventually it could seep out that way. So yeah, that's my point. If we don't know how to give ourselves compassion, it's so easy to fall into the trap of just giving and giving and giving to other people, and then burning out. When we give and give and give of ourselves, it can drive us to anger and burnout, because we don't give time for us to receive anything in return, or to give ourselves anything in return. It doesn't have to be like, yeah, if I give to you, you have to give to me. I mean, not necessarily, although of course that's ideal. But we can learn to give ourselves, to refill ourselves in other ways. If we pay attention, if we are compassionate with ourselves, we can learn to do that. That's why self-compassion is important. That's why self-compassion, I think, should be the starting point before you can actually go ahead and give, big compassion to other people. And that's not selfish. Learning self-compassion equips you and prepares you to give compassion to other people. And also, see, if we don't know how to look into ourselves and really see the ugly, flawed parts of us, as well as the beautiful, great parts of us, if we don't know how to do that with ourselves, if we don't know how to look inside us and ask all these questions, like, what made me do that? Why did I act that way? How can I better myself, etc.? If we don't know how to do that to ourselves, how can we really learn how to do that to other people? How can we hold the feelings and ideas and opinions that really could be very different from ours? How can we do that for other people when we can't do that for what's going on inside of ourselves? So, if we don't have that skill to pause and know ourselves, how can we have that skill to pause and know other people? That's why we really need to start with ourselves. Okay? Again, I'm not saying any of this is easy, and I know I also still didn't fully answer the question of how do we root, in compassion when it comes to anger. But I thought I needed to start with this. Any kind of compassion we want to cultivate, we have to start with ourselves. Whew, I know this is not an easy topic. I know I keep on saying it's hard, but because I know it is. But yeah, I hope that gave you a lot to think about. Okay? And send me your thoughts. Send me your questions. I hope to continue this conversation in next week's video. So that's it for this week. See you guys next week.